On our last interview, we discussed Trump and end-time prophecy, and people commented why they believe Trump is the Antichrist. We're going to examine their reasons and reveal whether or not Trump fits the biblical description of the Antichrist.
One of the things I didn't realize about when you asked me the question about Trump is that I was answering it kind of unclearly. But a lot of people, which gave a lot of people the idea that I was really saying, yes, Trump could be the Antichrist. And really, I wasn't really thinking that at all. But since, that video and the comments, there have been a ton of people, but what about this? What about that? And so I thought, yes, you're right, that is something that's good to be talking about. And like one of the things, just to start off is, that the Antichrist is going to look like, this beast from the book of Daniel. But one of the things is it says that he has a mouth like a lion. And you're like, oh, now, okay, that's Trump, right? He's a bold guy and he speaks like a lion. And, that's an interesting, right, kind of observation. You go, yeah, that's good. But in general, that would be true of a lot of people. And it's actually one of the things that I respect about him. And so, yes, it could be another person like that. But, now one of the things that probably most people don't like about Trump is another comment that the Antichrist would be boastful and arrogant, right? And we just, as believers, we recognize once we start getting boasting and showing our arrogance, that's a problem. We're working out of the flesh at the very least, right? And so yes, but let's also be honest. How many boastful and arrogant people are we seeing in the world today? Quite a few, right? So that's a normal part of human nature.
Well, yeah, and there's other politicians who are boastful and and arrogant. So I know, just to point that out. But it almost sounds like talking points from the news media. Some of these points,
right?
But
exactly, yeah. So it's not a great identifier of the Antichrist. Let's just say that, right? So it's just one of his side. Like there's primary characteristics and there's secondary characteristics, and so. Anybody can have secondary characteristics. We're really looking for primary things. One of those primary things is the Antichrist will deny the Father and the Son. And a lot of people have tried to say, well, but, Trump isn't really, he doesn't think he needs forgiveness, or he hasn't, made statements that are really the way we would express Christian faith in many orthodox ways that other people have thought about. But think about Islam that says, God is one, he has no son. And, and Allah is not a father, nor can he beget anyone. Those are very explicit statements that deny the Father and the Son. And you don't have stuff like that really coming out of Trump's mouth that I've heard. But that is kind of an important sign that you really deny the Father and the Son, and so that's one that would be looking for. He's a vile person. In the scripture. And, that's very subjective. And there's a lot of people that have a very strong visceral reaction to Trump, but, there's a lot of people that love him. So, vileness is kind of a tough one. He throws truth to the ground is another one from Daniel 8. Maybe, there's people who say, oh, I don't think he's been truthful. Trump did a lot of the stuff that he said he would do. Right. That comes in my book is pretty honest. And if you look at where truth is being thrown to the ground, it seems to be a lot more on the other side of the political aisle, where truth is being trampled.
Right. No, I totally understand. In some of these, the comments that people have said of why he is, we are seeing this in other people. So it's like, boastful and arrogant. I have seen so many politicians being boastful. And also, they say he's always saying me, me, me. Now, listen, I'm not totally defending Trump. I keep an eye out on everyone. Like, what are you doing? There are some things I don't agree with. So I'm not like, oh my gosh, rah, rah. But right. I want to weigh it both ways. And so it's like I've seen him, in political meetings where he's like going like it's all of us, not just me who's doing this. He's always pointing where it's all of us. And I also see him exalting other people. Lifting them up, which honestly I haven't seen any other politician do. Now again, I'm not saying he is or isn't. I'm just saying
Yep.
for that reason, I'm like, that's kind of a weak one. But go on, Christian.
Yeah, I mean, really, the premise is that we're looking for someone to do the primary signs that are, we're trying to guess early. We're looking for the abomination of desolation. We're looking for some other things like that. But on that line, it's the covenant with the many. Like, oh, but he's going to make the peace agreement, and Trump made that peace agreement, the Abraham Accords. And you go, so isn't that mean it's him? And certainly he was there, and he was there smiling, with some of the other guys in front of the cameras. But there were so many people involved in bringing about those accords that we can't. There's not a single, oh, that's the guy who single-handedly brought this all to bear.
Right, including
So,
Jared Kushner.
exactly. So there are people who are legitimately, and Saudi Arabia was approving that, even though they're like, but they haven't even signed the accords yet. Yes, but UAE and Bahrain would not have been able to move forward without kind of a soft blessing from Saudi Arabia. Sorry.
Yeah, now you also brought up an interesting point that the Abraham Accords that it could be used by the Antichrist because
Yes.
explain that.
Yeah, and because it's either strengthening, but one of the things that's I would guess people haven't really thought about, it means to give strength to the covenant, that he will confirm or he will make firm, he will increase the resolve of the covenant. Well, another way to do that is negatively, not just positively. So in other words, like, let's say we identified the Antichrist somewhere out of this northern Gog Magog kind of group, because we definitely think about the Antichrist also being part of Gog and Magog, and that's Turkey, Russia, Iran, these countries to the north, Syria. It's in that space that we're kind of looking for someone who's really going to fulfill the scriptures about the Antichrist. And so if those guys are attacking Israel, and then you have these southern states that are more moderate, like Bahrain, UAE, Saudi Arabia, they have a choice. They either have to step away from Israel, or they have to increase their connection to Israel and strengthen their resolve to support it and face a northern alliance together, right? And so by attacking Israel, you might strengthen the covenant with their more moderate neighbors. I mean, it's just, they're just different ways. Like we just, we get an idea in our mind that it has to be this way, and it might be fulfilled in a different way again. I mean, that was one of the big things that we talked about right off the bat was, prophecy probably isn't going to get fulfilled exactly the way we imagined. And so we've got to keep looking back to the text. Well, what does it say? And then what are different ways that might come about? And then just, keep watching.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's very, very interesting. Now, we're going to go into more reasons why people are saying that Trump is the Antichrist. And if you like what you're hearing, and then please subscribe to the channel. But go on, Christian, let's go through some other reasons.
Yeah. So also he honors a God of forces or fortresses, or a God of strength. And so certainly Trump is a strong man, in his political position, right? He does what he says. He's not easily influenced by other people. He kind of, my way or the highway, people might maybe say it that way. But we're also talking about, not only is the Antichrist supposed to be a God of fortresses, but he also makes war or attacks against the strongest fortresses. And you go, so who's that? I mean, in that scenario, it would be easy to see, for example, the United States as a strong fortress. And so, is it something instead? It's an enemy of the United States. It's not somebody within the United States, right? We tend to look, especially Americans. I mean, we do view things through our own lens, right?
Everything is centered around us,
yeah,
the United States.
Right.
Yeah.
We can't help it. And I don't buy the line that America is not in prophecy at all. There was simply no name for America. So, but there are plenty of sort of scenarios and actors and ships from the West and, the Western coastlands. And there's some references to the islands of the sea, and things that you go, who could that be? So it's possible that America does the two wings of a great eagle, helping Israel in Revelation. There's plenty of references that might be. Now, nobody can be dogmatic, but I wouldn't be dogmatic that America is not there either. So I think we have probably some role to play, but you can see that America is also on our way down. Like the end of the Pax Americana, the American peace that we brought about because we were strong and because we were, making a positive influence, that has eroded to a large degree. And part of the trouble that we're seeing is because America is on the decline in many ways. So, but that is continuing us in the move towards, a world that's looking more and more like the fulfillment of prophecy, where Trump was wanting to make America great again, which would have restrained and pushed back on this rise of globalism and, the kind of the collapse of this global peace that we've had for a long time.
Yep. Now, again, we're going to go into some more of the reasons why people are saying that Trump is the Antichrist. But, right, I mean, securing the borders, he wants to secure the borders. And so that is the totally opposite of globalism. And
Right.
I heard him once say, he said, look, I'm not the president of the world. I'm just the president of the United States. So,
Yeah.
but I want to go back to honors the God of forces. This is what people
Sure.
were saying. They were saying,
Yep.
well, look, his properties have a sun god decorations, and Apollo is in his, in the gold decorations. And
Mhm.
I mean, I've seen a lot of very, very rich people. They don't know better. They hire an interior
Yeah.
decorator, and they don't have any idea. I mean, especially if they're either a new believer or not a believer, they don't know. So, but that was one of the reasons why people were saying he was the Antichrist.
Oh yeah, that's another, bizarre sign of these days is the rise of sort of all these pagan motifs that are coming back into, popular culture that, are from a Christian perspective, like, oh, look, we need to do away with that. But they're becoming popular again. And yeah, I think you're right. People aren't really thinking through that whole thing. So.
Right. Okay. And if you can go into more of the reasons of what people are saying.
Oh, sure. So, the funny thing with his name being Trump, a trumpet can also be a ram's horn. And so, oh, the little horn or one of the horns of the beast, that must, be a reference to Trump. Right. And, yes, certainly it's an interesting thing that horns are Trumps also. Right. But I don't see that as the little horn that becomes large. Trump is kind of a larger than life guy from the very beginning. Right. Not so much coming out of nowhere as an unknown figure that rises to prominence through deception. Um,
Ah, okay. So that's how it's described then in the Bible, as far
yes,
as the
that there's
little
a little
horn.
horn and it will grow up and it will supplant or tear out three horns before it, which is another kind of interesting sign. But we're looking for, all right, where is Trump, grown up? He's always been this kind of big figure, and so I don't see that association very well either. But you could see, hey, it looks like a trump, looks like a horn. Maybe that's the same thing. So I get why people would say that, but I'm not sure his life, at least at this point, has really fulfilled that picture, that metaphorical picture.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you said at this point, because the thing is, we are being open. We're wanting to weigh things and look at what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, go into more reasons of what they're saying.
So, other things, that he's a charismatic figure, and you go, yes, okay, for sure, the Antichrist has to be a charismatic figure, but you kind of have to be a charismatic figure to lead in politics no matter what, right? You're not going to get elected without charisma. So again, those are general signs, but they're not very specific signs. And in many ways, yeah, Trump has a good following, but his following is more on the righteous side. So you have people who want, you know, rights for people. They want to restore the Constitution. They want the Bible and Christianity to be defended and upheld. They want to end abortion. These are a lot of things that are good and right. And you don't see him taking that. You see Trump taking that side. You don't see him tearing that side down. And so, it's like, yes, he's charismatic, but he's moving in a positive direction as opposed to trying to bring in, like Obama, for example, was a very charismatic figure, but he was tearing America down. He was tearing down he was declaring that we were no longer a Christian nation. That's the kind of thing that I would expect from the Antichrist, because the Antichrist also wages war against the saints. So I don't expect the Antichrist to defend Christians and to defend freedoms and to defend free speech and the expression of our beliefs. I see the Antichrist taking the side that is trying to get rid of free speech because of the need to follow a higher moral principle, which is woke ideology.
Right. So, but you know what, Christian people right now would probably be who think Trump is the Antichrist. They're going to just say, Christians are so deceived, and he's deceiving you all. You're going to see he's going to come back into power. He's going to become the president again, and he's going to change. He just lured you in.
Yes, and certainly anybody can. There's always this. Is it really a sheep, or is it a wolf in sheep's clothes, right? But when I think politically, I look at like two paths. One leads to certain death, and the other one is a possible death scenario. Like, yes, maybe we could be deceived, but I know for sure that door number one, under Biden, for example, leads to 1984. So, I'm not going through the door that goes to 1984. The dark alley where I can't see perfectly, where maybe there's a trap, maybe there's some kind of deception that I haven't perceived yet. That's still the only option at the present, right? So to me, it's just, I simplify it. And if I'm afraid that maybe imagine if we made all our decisions on the fear of something somebody might do that they haven't done yet. That's a tough world that's a tough way to make decisions. So I think we have to go on what he's done. And what he's done is defend Israel, strengthen the borders, right? Defend the Constitution, free speech, and that kind of thing. And against abortion, right? Those are all things
against globalism, and got out of the Paris Climate Agreement.
Absolutely. Yep. Those were all terrible things. Getting America energy independent. Look at how much we've suffered just because, on day one, the Biden administration started a war on our energy independence.
Right. Now again, we're going to go through more of the reasons, and again, Christian and I are totally watching what's going on. We're not going to just say, "Oh, everything he does is right." Everything, no. Yeah. So, okay, keep on going with some of the other reasons.
And really, those two things are different. Like there's the politics. The problem is politics are getting mixed in with prophecy, and you're in prophecy. If we're looking for real events to happen, then certainly the politics, the personalities that are existing are part of that, and so then they get intermingled. But yes, my primary lens is prophetic. I'm looking at the scripture, and I'm looking for who's going to fulfill the scripture. And politics are just, in any given time that I get a chance to vote, right? I've got to decide what's the lesser of two evils. And so I try to keep it simple. I don't worship, or follow anybody, religiously like that, except Jesus Christ, right? He's the king. He's the one who is the only one who has really ruling power and authority over the planet. He hasn't exerted that fully yet, right? He has it in heaven. God does rule over the affairs of men, whether we recognize it or not. But he promised that he's going to come back and he will actually take authority and dominion over earth, right? So that this is the millennium. That's the time that I'm looking for. And so that's the only true king that I recognize. I know you recognize, right? So we don't have loyalty beyond what's proper in the current context, right? There's no special worship or there's no need to be worried about a deception that, because, you don't have eyes to see. Like, no, we're looking, right? I'm watching, but I'm making judgments on what he's actually done, not what I fear he might do.
Right. Okay, well, let's go into more of the reasons.
Yeah. All right. So, is he a political genius? The military genius, like the Antichrist is gonna bring together forces, and he's gonna start taking control over the world, right? And so those are kind of funny ones that I think. I think Trump is actually an intelligent guy, right? but I don't know that I would say he's you know, a total genius, or that kind. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a genius, so that's no insult to anybody. But do we really see that the masterful? He's gotten elected, and he's used things wisely, but at the same time, that's I just see that as really God's providence. Like, I think, just look at the last 4 years. If Trump had lost in 2016, and we had ended up with Hillary, we would have already been here where we are back in 2019, right? It would have already been, we'd have already seen the rapid decline of America that we've seen so far. So by him getting elected, we actually kind of slowed that down until these last few years.
Right. Now, okay, another reason why people say he's the Antichrist, they said he's a commercial genius because there's a scripture in Revelation and Daniel. So being a commercial genius makes him the Antichrist.
Right. Yes. And again, lots of great business people in the world. So that's not a single defining figure. But really, when you're looking at somebody that the world is going to follow, he has to be perceived as all those things, right? So it has to be somebody who is perceived as politically successful and charismatic and good in business, and good in foreign policy, and all of these things. That's what makes people want to. We like to follow winners, and so we like to follow people who are showing that they have a good idea of where to go, and that they're going to be able to bring their plans to fruition. And so everybody in that position that people are going to follow has to fill a lot of those things. So in some way, they're just really very general signs of somebody who's going to be successful. Okay, but that doesn't mean any successful person like Trump is going to be the Antichrist.
Right now, I've heard other people say, well, Trump is the Antichrist because Jared Kushner's building in New York City is 666, which actually I was looking it up, and it's not 666 anymore. It's now 660.
Okay, well, I think that was wise, because I did look that up before, back when it was still 666, and I thought that was very interesting. As a believer, I can't imagine buying a property that it has the address 666, right? That would just be like, no, we'll rule that one out. But if you don't believe in those things, which I'm not sure that Jared Kushner does, right, then maybe you wouldn't care. It's just a number, right? Unless you're seeing that in a Christian context. But what was very interesting about that building, I don't know how many people know this, but he was in trouble financially, Jared Kushner was. And then he got a 99-year lease out of one of the either UAE or Bahrain or something. A firm leased it from him and then kind of rescued him financially in that building. And so, like, early on, there was this really massive financial tie back to the Middle East that you go, what's that about? I mean, I have no idea, right? But it seems odd to lease a building for 99 years in advance and paid cash up front. So that was a special deal, right? And who knows? But you could see there's where politics and money are mixing, right? Jared Kushner is a player. I mean, he's made the Abraham Accords nonprofit that is supporting and building the Abraham Accords. So Jared Kushner is still involved in that. He's popped up in some very interesting places. But I think of the who the Antichrist is at the moment. There are, there's a dozen people that you could go, what about that guy? What about this guy? And, so we have it's like a lineup of suspects, right? And we're trying to see, right, who could it be?
Right. Now, I have done other interviews with some people, Craig Bong and Tim Cohen, and they have actually very compelling reasons on who they believe the Antichrist is.
Right.
But those are the kind of reasons that I don't see Trump having. But are there any other things that you want to say as far as the comments?
Another thing is that through peace, right, he would destroy many. I think that's in Daniel 8:25. And so when people think about that, there's also the verse that says when people are saying peace and safety, then destruction will come on them swiftly, and they will not escape, or words to that effect. And so definitely, also the first seal, the rider of the white horse rides out conquering and to conquer, and the second rider is given a great sword and the power to make men slay one another and to take peace from the earth. And so people see this. So the Antichrist is going to be promising peace. He's going to be promising to fix things and make them better. So you see sort of a Machiavellian plot here, because the Antichrist is part of the forces that are destabilizing the world and bringing chaos. And yet, on the other hand, the Antichrist is going to promise to fix it, right? So that was the plot of Machiavelli, was to bring in the people to cause chaos, and then he's going to come in and save the day, and everybody's going to love him for fixing it. But you make the crisis that you're claiming to fix, and so I think that will be part of people give up their freedoms in order for safety and security, right? They want peace, so they're in some ways, sometimes people will prefer to be a slave than to be living in an insecure world. And so will he use that? Yes, but I think Trump is actually doing the opposite, right? He's actually trying to restore freedoms, individual freedoms, and we're supposed to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. I mean, just as it's certainly not of the Antichrist to want to bring peace, right? That's actually Christ is the Prince of Peace. We're supposed to seek peace and pursue it. The trick is, are you promising peace but actually doing something else, right? Are you using that as a trick to take freedoms away from people? And I don't think that's what I've seen at the present from Trump's direction. He wants to strengthen our constitutional republic, not treat those as bygone ways of living that need to be replaced with globalism and
Right.
a great reason.
Right. And now, but still, people will say, yeah, but in Israel, they've named some, I don't know, places after him, and they've awarded him different things. He has this connection with Israel that makes him the Antichrist.
Yes, except we really expect the Antichrist to be against Israel, right? Not supporting Israel. So the idea that's really just an interpretation. It's an assumption that the Jews would at first embrace the Antichrist, and that's maybe what the text means, but I don't know that that's necessarily true. Like, what we may just be looking for, somebody who's purely against Israel, and that seems to be what the text describes. In fact, even in Daniel 11, it talks about the forces of the Antichrist coming against the temple fortress, to set up the abomination of desolation. That doesn't sound like somebody that Israel has embraced, right? It sounds like somebody who's coming viciously against, the heart of Jerusalem, right, at the Temple Mount. So I don't know if I see that, but I think those are things to keep in mind, right? But I think it's more that it's the Antichrist will be an enemy, not a friend of Israel. And even then, what about all the Christian supporters of Israel today? Right now, they're also in league with the Antichrist because they support Israel, God's homeland. I mean, I just can't see that. But the other thing, that as we're looking for the Antichrist and we're talking about all these different characteristics, like, one of the really important things to remember is that all the characteristics that we're told about the Antichrist really apply to two people, not one. And we go, what do you mean two people? There's a beast from the sea and there's a beast from the earth. And it's one is kind of a military figure, and then the other one looks like a lamb but speaks like a dragon. It's the second beast that forces everyone to get the mark. You're like, no, the mark of the beast, that's the one the Antichrist gives. No, it's the second beast that forces everyone to get the mark. It's the second one that forces everybody to worship the first beast, and who does signs and wonders. And so a lot of the characteristics that we're looking for could be mixed. And so we don't have to see one person who has, all of these features. And so that's just another thing to keep in mind as we're kind of going through that. But one, the beast and the false prophet, and they're both sort of the Antichrist. And also the Antichrist is called an Assyrian. And we see something that's really kind of Middle East focused. There is the idea from the statue of Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel's dream, and about a statue of gold and silver, and you get down to the feet, and they're miry clay. They're iron mixed with clay. And so you do also get an idea for 10 toes. And so you like 10 kings. Okay, but it's a mixed empire. What does that mean? A lot of people have different ideas, but it definitely tells you this is not a homogeneous single thing that we're looking for. We're looking for something that is an amalgam. And so it could be an amalgam of East and West. It could be an amalgam of sort of roots that go to the Roman Empire in the West, and some of the things that we see with globalism. These roots, you do have this root of kind of socialism, Marxism, fascism, that all go back and sort of claim, back to these pagan roots of the Roman Empire. And then you also have Islam that's rising up, that's on the East, that is definitely also opposed. It has the Antichrist spirit. It denies the Father and the Son. And those two have worked together since World War II. You saw the Mufti of Jerusalem conspiring with Hitler. And you're like, what? Where did these two forces come together? You do see some things that definitely look like the things that are described, but we don't see them associated with Trump. We see Trump standing against those things.
But I do find it interesting of what you're talking about, because some people just say the Antichrist has to totally just come from the Roman Empire, and then others are totally saying from the Middle East. And when you're talking about Nebuchadnezzar's dream and mixing iron and clay, and that it would use these two forces to come together, that's a very, very interesting concept. I never really thought about that, but keep going.
Right. Yeah. Because, you're looking at that picture and you're trying to understand what that might mean. And, some people have thought about maybe it's like Nephilim and people and a mix like that it's sort of demonic and human. But we were also looking at this from the things that are in front of us. And right in front of us is this bizarre mix of radical Islam and Marxist, socialism. And so, and which I call fascism. I put all those together. Like a lot of times people will call fascism like on the extreme right. And I don't believe that. I look at fascism as just a further extension of socialism. So, and in fact, there's a lot of the people who are in that socialist Marxist camp have said those are just the precursors for fascism. So, I wouldn't be the only one saying that. So anyway, so this gives us a series of things that we're looking for about the Antichrist that are matching really well with stuff that already exists. And we don't have to look homeward. We have to, I think, look out and look at the world as a whole and see where are we seeing the forces that match what we expect the Antichrist to develop, to be part of. Where do we see that developing? Another kind of neat old ideas from Irenaeus, and he talked about that the tribe of Dan probably had an association with the Antichrist.
Now, when did he live about? When did he?
So he lived from like 130 to 200 AD.
Okay.
Irenaeus was a disciple of Polycarp, who was a disciple of John. So that puts him in a really good position to sort of speak authoritatively on any kind of prophetic topic, because you would have thought that Polycarp was probably taught prophecy by, the Apostle John, who wrote Revelation. And Polycarp probably taught Irenaeus, his disciple, about, these things too. And in fact, Irenaeus wrote a lot about that. He also wrote about, some people might have heard that the mark of the beast is at 666 or is it 616? And going all the way back to 180 AD, there was a rumor or an idea circulating that it wasn't really 666, it was 616. And so people will reference that and go, see, the original was 616, and try to make an association between that and Islam, because the way it's written might look like Arabic. But Irenaeus was saying, no, I'm going to finish this. I'm telling you, it's not 616. It's definitely 666. And so this, instead of supporting the idea, he's actually refuting the idea in his refutation of heresies. And so definitely the number is 666. And this is a great topic for identifying the Antichrist. Like, oh, so how is his name? How is his number 666? And that's going to be important, but that's a secondary sign that we're going to apply to the person who first identifies themselves as the Antichrist by, one, setting themselves up in the temple of God and declaring themselves to be God, by being behind the abomination of desolation, however that occurs, that they are going to begin to rule and take charge over the earth for 42 months. Those are the things that we have to see to really go, oh yeah, absolutely, that's the Antichrist. And then we'll look for confirming signs. And so all the things that we talked about, is he boastful? Is he proud? Another one, he has no regard for women. That I don't know that applies to Trump. Just saying, people would probably criticize him for the other way, having too much regard. And so, but those are all important things that will help us confirm that we've seen the Antichrist.
Right. Now, I want to go back to, though, because I cut you off about as far as the tribe of Dan. If you could just.
Oh, yeah. So, but just, the tribe of Dan is one of the other things that he said. And that gives you this idea that the Antichrist might have, or one of the two Antichrists, again, there's not just one. So one of them may have a Jewish connection. Maybe. That was an idea. And if you look today, like a lot of the people in globalism are also, there are some, like George Soros, for example, huge globalist, also happens to be Jewish. Now, before this starts a bunch of, conspiracy stuff, all I'm pointing out is that one of the enemies of Israel, of the Jewish people, happens to be Jewish. So it's just like a lot of the Americans that live in America today that I think are enemies of our Constitution and of our constitutional republic and the nation that I was born into are Americans, right? So this just acknowledges that sometimes our enemies are from within. That's all I'm saying. And you had, for example, the northern tribes attacking the tribe of Judah. So this is just, this has always gone on that a lot of times our enemies are from our own camp. So, will there be some kind of connection like that? Yes, there could be, right? It's just Dan was also the most northern tribe and was the first tribe to sort of intermix with the Assyrians. And so, you just see some kind of connection, but it points us to the Middle East. It points us to Assyria. It points us, in that direction, Turkey maybe. It doesn't really point us towards the West.
Okay, now you said two antichrists, but is that because of when you were talking about two beasts?
Yes. So the two beasts, and like I said, both those beasts we think of as doing things that we instantly recognize as, no, that's the Antichrist. For example, if I said, who makes everybody receive a mark? And you go, oh, that's the Antichrist. Yes, but that's the second beast who does it.
Okay.
Right. So that's the it's just important to remember that this is an amalgam of two people. And actually, just like the toes are an amalgam of steel and clay, our thoughts about the Antichrist are also an amalgam of two beasts, the beast and the false prophet, the beast from the sea and the beast from the earth. And then speaking of the beast from the earth, it's a beast from the land. And that's another reason why people have wondered if this false prophet will have a Jewish connection and will be from the land. Will it be a false Messiah? Will it be, something like that we then go, oh, yes. But we're speculating, right? We're guessing. We're trying to keep an open mind. What are the scriptures indicating? As these things happen, it will become, increasingly more clear. But but just, the other idea that is big is, as we're doing this, the Antichrist is also going to pretend to be righteous, right? And is going to call the righteous ones evil. Evil will be called good, and good will be called evil. And so for anybody wants to be a Christian, who is a Christian, who wants to go the right direction, yes, they're concerned. How are we being deceived? And how do we know who's right and who's wrong? Who do we know who's telling the truth? Who do we know who's really the good guy and who's really the bad guy? Well, it's knowing then these scriptures and really thinking about, okay, who's actually completing all of these prophecies and demonstrating themselves, because this second beast will look like a lamb, but speak like the dragon. This means he's gonna look like a good guy, right? But does that mean then we can now look at the good guy and call the good guy bad?
Yeah, but a lot of people think that Trump doesn't look like the good guy. I mean, actually, a lot of people were saying that, people like Pence was a good guy, and I'm not going to get into that. But anyway,
Right? Yes.
yeah.
Yep. So talking about the mark of the beast, people have wondered really like what it might be, and there's been a lot of speculation already about things that are out there, digital currencies and everything else, chips that are being implanted. Could those be? And I would say there's a lot of technology that's developing that looks like the kind of technology you need for the mark of the beast. But the key to the mark of the beast is not the technology. The key thing about the mark of the beast will be denying God, denying Jesus Christ. It will be worshiping the beast. You will have to. So I think of it like the oath of naturalization. So when people come from another country and they want to become American citizens, they have to take an oath that says they will support and uphold and defend the Constitution, that they believe in our country, and that they denounce all other associations to foreign powers, right? So becoming a new part of the beast system will be denouncing all other allegiances, right? All other gods. It will be denouncing Christ. It will be denouncing, and they won't be able to just knock you out and then give you some mark and oops, now you're going to hell. No, because that's not the purpose of the mark. The purpose of the mark is to get you to deny God.
Right, and to worship the Antichrist.
Yes, and to worship the Antichrist. And furthermore, when will that come? Will that come on day one of the Antichrist's reign, beginning of his 42-month reign? First day, he starts rolling out the mark. And no, he won't. Why? Well, one, it's the second beast, not the first beast, who brings the mark. So that already tells us it's a delay of time. And then second, there's an angel that flies through mid-heaven declaring the eternal gospel, but also there's an angel that flies through that says that, and if anyone gets the mark of the beast or the number of his name, right, then he will, I forget the wording, but we can pull it up. But it's basically that you'll burn in the fires of hell, right? That anyone who takes the mark of the beast cannot be saved. So this is a big warning, and by kind of thinking of it in that terms, then can the warning come after everybody's gotten the mark? Like, no, it has to come. The warning has to come before the vast majority of the world has gotten the mark, or it's not a warning. And so I think the mark of the beast will come very late in those 3.5 years, and you'll see like the Antichrist building his kingdom, developing his power, and the deception will be growing. Finally, the mark of the beast will come out.
In the second 3.5 years, you're saying? In
the second 3.5 years, and even well into the second 3.5 years, because these are part of once the heavenly judgments have really begun to be poured out on the earth, and then you get this warning. And so that's just important to keep in mind. That doesn't mean that if you see a technology you think is going in that direction, you go, I don't want to have anything to do with using that technology. Well, fine, right? I mean, I don't have any objection to that, but just don't think that you can get it by accident. or that you can get it and not know it. The most important part of getting the mark of the beast will be denouncing your faith in God and in Jesus Christ.
Right, right. Yeah, and I remember years ago some people saying I'm not going to get a social security number because that's the mark of the beast.
Right.
So, but
Yeah.
right, and so some people have the same. Now, if they want to put an implant in me, I still don't really want that. But
Absolutely.
right,
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's okay to I think it's okay to not, participate in things that you don't feel good about. Right. I mean, that's part of being in a free country too.
right.
So another thing that is the big part of identifying the Antichrist is the abomination of desolation. And there's kind of two things that we think of about the abomination of desolation. One, there's three really, but halting the sacrifice, and setting up some kind of abomination, desecration, a desolation. I mean, we really don't quite know what those words mean exactly. What I mean is we don't know what they're pointing to. But it's something that has to be focused at the Temple Mount. People have wondered, could it be, something about us as believers? We're the temple of God. I think that's, I see the symbolism, but I don't see how you specifically identify the abomination of desolation as a marker event, and it's just associated with something spiritual and internal, right? I don't know how we marked as an event. So I think it will be an actual physical event. But then it says, and he will set himself up in the temple of God and declare himself to be God. And that's something that is seems to be definitely the temple area. But as I thought about it, we think of those things happening at the same time. He's gonna, like, in the 135 BC or somewhere around there, Antiochus Epiphanes did an abomination of desolation, and he set up an idol in the temple, and that kind of was like, oh, so that set this expectation that you're going to set something up in the temple, declaring to be God, and desolate it, and halt the sacrifices all at the same time. But if we look carefully in Daniel, where it says, from the time that he halts the sacrifice and sets up the abomination of desolation, there will be 1,290 days. And that gives us, a count. Blessed is he who waits for 1,335 days. It gives us some days to count, but what is it counting from? From the time that he sets himself up in the temple and declares himself to be God? No, only halting the sacrifice and doing some kind of abomination and desolation at that area. And so when I read that and think about it, then I go, oh, well, it could be that the Antichrist will set himself up in God's temple later, at a different moment. So imagine causing a great desolation at the Temple Mount on the one hand, and then coming in later and pretending to have fixed it, right, and brought peace, and then you set yourself up, as God in the temple, right? That those are separate events, and so then we might get deceived, or we might get tricked because we thought, oh, well, look, that couldn't have been the abomination of desolation because he never declared himself to be God. It's like, well, maybe I agree he has to do that, but maybe that will be a little bit later, right? So maybe these events will be separated in time, and we push them together like they're all at the same time, and so there'll be another thing that I think is important to watch for, that hey, wait a sec, maybe this abomination of desolation again is not going to go exactly the way we thought, right? So for sure the Antichrist has to do those things, but does he have to do them all at the same time? Is that really the count at the beginning of the middle? So what if that came later? What if that came even a year later, right? Would we still be able to go, oh, wait a sec, yes, he did this, and then later he establishes peace. Later he even maybe builds a temple later than we thought, right? That's like, last time I talked about, or maybe some other time I've talked about how maybe the existing temple is sufficiently built now, because we know where the holy place is. The Temple Mount actually still exists. The whole Temple Mount was the temple area in the first century. That's what early Christians and Jesus, when he went to the temple, he went to that Temple Mount. So some of that stuff exists, but maybe, this is just going to roll out a little bit differently. You're going to get this halting of the sacrifice, some kind of abomination of desolation. And even the halting of the sacrifice is a word that means like to abolish or to leave undone, like to cause to be set aside. And we think about that means, that means they have to have been doing it. And it's like, well, it could also mean that he's going to keep it from being done. He's going to act to prevent them from doing sacrifices. And that's a big idea, because if you think about what happened on October 7th, one of the reasons they said they were attacking on October 7th was because of the red cows, because of the Jewish interest to sacrifice the red heifers. That's why they attacked. So would an attack at the Temple Mount that was with the express purpose of preventing the Jews from doing a sacrifice, like, because we don't want you to do this sacrifice, we're attacking, right? So we're going to try to stop you from being able to do it. Is that also, could you halt something that had never started at all, but it was their express purpose to keep you from, it's to cause you to leave it undone, to cause you to set it aside? I would go, ooh, maybe, right? Maybe that could be a fulfillment of that verse. It's not what I expected. It's not what I thought. And I would only think that because I'm looking at real events and I'm trying to look at the text, look at the, what does that Hebrew word really mean? What's the nuance that's there, not in the English, right? It's got to be, what's the nuance in the Hebrew? And is there room in the grammar for a broader understanding of what we had before? And after I looked at it, I thought, I think there is some room to think of this as any attack that is for the express purpose of preventing sacrifice would actually be fulfill the words of Daniel in causing the daily to be set aside, or the causing the sacrifice to be left undone. And the sacrifice of the red heifer is really one of the things that they have to have in order to reinstate daily sacrifices, because they can do some sacrifices, but they need to be kind of they need to purify the implements that they're going to use for sacrifice. I mean, there's a lot of things that would, I'm obviously I'm not Jewish. I'm Christian. I'm not a rabbi. So arguing about what they can or can't do without the red heifer, I mean, I'll leave that to others to debate. But I know they would like to have it, and it's important in the practice of the temple.
Oh, very, very interesting. Okay, now, Christian, if you could tell everyone how they can find you, like your website and the books that you have, where they could buy it or get a PDF copy of your books, if you can give that information.
Sure. So I have two books, The Temple Revealed, The True Location of the Jewish Temple Hidden in Plain Sight. And that's this one. And you can just download that off my website. You can find it on Amazon. And it just talks about the temple location being in the north, where the Dome of the Spirits is, how we know for sure where the Holy of Holies is, so that we can watch for where the Abomination of Desolation is supposed to take place. And then this book is Witnessing the End, Daniel 77's and the Final Decree Everyone Missed, and talks about the countdown that started in 2020 for the final 7 years that I think is going to be demonstrated very soon. We're waiting to see if there is an abomination of desolation this spring. If there's some sign that the Antichrist has begun to rise, that's why we're talking about this. Why is it so important to understand these signs? Because we're looking for the Antichrist to possibly appear soon. And so we want to know and be able to recognize him if he does. And that is also available on my website. You can go to endtimesberean.com or witnessingtheend.com. And both books are available for free. Just download the PDF or go to Amazon. You can find a print copy. I prefer reading a print copy, but also I know many of your viewers are not, where they can order a book easily off of Amazon. And so then just, go to the website, find the book, you can download it for free. So.
Yep, and we'll have all of that information in the description. Thank you, Christian, so much for another amazing interview. Thank you.
No, thank you, Janie.
L.A. Marzulli made an end-time discovery that no one was ever supposed to see. Click the video to watch now.